So welcome everyone to our final day of our Attitude Festival, and this lunchtime session is focused on Qualifications 22. So you may have started to hear a little bit about some changes that are going to be happening to the syllabus, and there's certainly been information coming out now from the AAT about what's happening with the qualifications next year. And you may started to have conversations with your training provider as well. I know that Nick in our distance learning team has run some Facebook Live sessions as well to discuss what this Qualifications 22 means. And the AAT regularly updates their syllabus, as do all the professional bodies. It's absolutely essential in our industry that we remain up to date. We're really lucky to be joined by Zoe Smith from the AAT, who not only is from the AAT, but she also has a huge amount of experience in working with training providers, working with students, apprentices, and she now works with the AAT and will really be able to give us a good insight into what Qualifications 2022 is and what perhaps it might mean for your journey through your AAT qualifications and through to becoming an accounting technician. So I've got a number of questions that I'm going to be asking you, Zoe, and more than happy to take other questions on board as well. So please do use the chat box and ask any questions. I may not get to them straight away. It may be that we gather them up and we have a look at them at the end of the session. But without kind of any more of me talking about an introduction, I'm going to hand over to Zoe. So Zoe, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about you and your role and a little bit about why the AAT syllabus is changing.
Thank you, Crystal. Yes, so I'm Zoe Smith. I'm the Regional Account Manager at AAT, and as Crystal said, I've been working with AAT, helping support qualifications teaching, helping them to run apprenticeships. So it's been something that's very close to my heart, and now I work with AAT. And one of the things that we have always done within AAT is make sure that the syllabus changes. Like Crystal said, it's important to make sure all qualifications do change so that they update in order to reflect the constant changing in the business world around us. So we know that employers use the AAT qualification, they respect and value that as a vocational pathway for their students to be able to gain the skills and the knowledge they need to be effective in their jobs in accounting and finance. So we want to make sure that our syllabus changes to reflect those changes, keeps up to date, and then provides you as students with the right training you need to be able to go out into the world of work in accounting.
And it's absolutely necessary. Things have changed so dramatically over recent years. Definitely, and it doesn't look like that momentum is going to stop. I think particularly this last year as well has had quite an impact on how we've had to adapt in the industry.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's about being flexible, about being adaptable, and actually that the role of a lot of our accountants, they've had to change and take on different responsibilities as well in the things that they've had to do as their companies have become more streamlined, as they're working from home. So it's just about trying to listen to the industry so that we can future-proof our qualifications and make sure that it's giving you the right skills as students that you need to be good at your jobs.
Definitely. So you sort of touched on it a little bit there, but could you explain a little bit more about what does the AAT actually do? What kind of process do you go through when updating the syllabus?
Yeah, so we make sure that when we look at the syllabus itself, we look at the learning outcomes that are going to be taught throughout it, and we speak to employers. We work alongside training providers, and we also have subject matter experts that look at the syllabus to look at what actually is still relevant, what do we need to remove, is there anything else that we need to add to make sure that it is still up to date. So we look and review the criteria that way, making sure that we take out any duplication of anything that's happened. And actually this time round, we've looked at the level 2, the level 3 and the level 4 together. So each of the units and each of the levels side by side. And we've done a bit more of a revamp this time round, where we have removed some of that duplication, where maybe in budgeting and in decision and control, there was a little bit of crossover with some of the content that was taught and assessed in those 2 units. So we've removed it so that it's not being taught and assessed twice, and then kind of combined that unit to make one big unit. And so we've taken out some of the elements that we feel is duplicated. And also what that's enabled us to do is make sure that we're teaching the right concepts at the right level as well. So we've kind of adapted the structure now so that we have our concepts and our principles are introduced at level 2. And then we develop that then at level 3, and then further build and analyse those concepts and principles at level 4. So it's more of a kind of steady progression to be able to help that smooth transition from one level to the next, and making sure that you still have all the up-to-date skills and knowledge that you need within each of those units and levels.
Fantastic. It really is kind of future-proofing this qualification for these changes that are going to continue over the coming years, isn't it? And yeah, that progression through it, I think I can definitely see that there is a much more distinct pathway through each of the 3 qualifications as well. I'm really, really excited about Qualifications 22. For anyone that I've spoken to before about it,
you
will probably know.
You are. And actually it was great. So Crystal was one of the chief technical leads that really helped with the development of this. So it's about bringing in people from outside to be able to bring those expertise in, like we did with Crystal, to be able to help to write the content. And it was about, you know, as we did, one of the roles that they did was about making sure there was consistency in the terminology that was used in the resources. And making sure that everything that was being taught was the right level, making sure that bringing in these new concepts and ideas, these changing digital technologies that were there, talking more around business environments that we haven't maybe looked at in as much detail. So we did definitely have some great people that came in to work with us at AAT to make sure that we had a good coverage and a wide perspective of what's needed for the changes of an accounting role.
Definitely. So I might be slightly biased in my excitement about it. But from my point of view, I was to see the work that went into the development of this syllabus and just the sheer amount of research and understanding that's taken from that external environment. It's not AAT that have just said, we're coming up with this because this is what we want you to do. They've really considered what's needed in a finance role. So looking at the employers, looking at the future of the industry, and also looking at the needs of the learner as well.
Sorry, Crystal, and again, once that was then designed, we then went back to the employers just to make sure that when we were putting the assessments together, that actually it did reflect the real life scenarios that you would actually see in a working environment. So we kind of went back to them to edit it and check it, just to make sure that we were on the right lines and it did match what's a realistic type of scenario that a student might be assessed.
Definitely. So for quite a few of this is going to have an impact. You will be seeing Qualifications 22. If you're almost at the end of your AAT journey, then maybe not. This may not affect you, but for many of you, it will. So Zoe, are you able to just talk us through what these kind of key dates are in terms of the introduction of this new syllabus?
Yes, thank you. So as you can see on there, the 31st of January 22 is the last date that you can register for an AQ16 qualification. So if you're registering for the first time with AAT and you wanted to do the AQ16, the current syllabus, you'd have to make sure you'd registered before the 31st of January because that's the cut-off date. So then any registrations from the 1st of February 22 would then be on the new qualification, so on our Quals 22 qualification from then on. And then for people who are still on the Quals 16, so the current syllabus, they need to make sure that they've sat their exams and prepared themselves to be able to complete everything and finalise, because the last date they can sit the assessment is the 30th of June 23. So that's the actual final date that they can sit it on. So we don't want you to be planning all the way up to that date. You know, you kind of want to think about actually making sure that you've got time to be able to complete and plan to maybe sit your final assessment in kind of February, March time, just to allow for any results to come in and then any resits to be done, so you're all finished and finalised by the 30th of June. So those are the 3 key dates really for you to remember.
And there's some really, really good points there. There is a hard switchover from dates when it comes to registration. So that is definitely a hard and fast. If you've registered by that date, you're on AQ16. If you register after that date, you're on Quals 22. But what the AAT has done is enabled a kind of both of those qualifications to be running alongside each other to support those people that need to finish off a level under AQ16, whilst those who have started Quals 22 will be running under that. So there's not quite such that hard cut-off if you're mid-level, which is a real benefit, I think, from which the AAT provide to their learners. They enable you to complete under a syllabus to then move on at your next level to the new syllabus. And I absolutely echo that point. Don't think that you should be planning your last exam to be on the 20th of June 2023 for a level. Much earlier, give yourself a little bit of leeway. Yeah, you just never know what could happen. Your exam could end up being cancelled. Maybe you're not successful with it first time. Give yourself opportunities.
Exactly. We're not telling you to plan to fail at all. We're just saying plan to give yourself leeway, give yourself space, make sure that you're comfortable to be able to finish and pass and have everything done and dusted and wrapped up nicely and tidily without there being a pressured end date for you to sit your assessment, because nobody likes sitting an exam under a stressed end date. So yeah, give yourself a little bit of good planning.
Definitely. Definitely. So I know that in this new syllabus, we have some themes. I have got a slide that I'll put up, but I'm not going to pop it up yet because it's a little bit distracting. But what would be really good, first of all, Zoe, is if you could explain to us why do we have these themes and what are they in the new syllabus?
So the themes are technology, ethics, sustainability and communication. And for those of you who are already doing AQ16, you'll know that actually we talk about these themes. They're not brand new topics, but the way that it's structured has been done a little bit differently, and we've definitely expanded on these topics. So you know, they're not brand new. We've talked about ethics before. Ethics was taught, as you know, as a level 3 unit, but actually it's something that, as with them being key themes, that's really important for our students to be able to have a good understanding of, to be able to apply them to the business environment, and skills to be able to have around things like communication is very important as an accountant. It's not just about being good at maths and being good with numbers, but needs to be able to communicate it too. But these themes are there so that they're structured, so now they are introduced at level 2, expanded upon at level 3, and then further kind of you do more of the analysis and the importance and the impact of those themes then at level 4. So in the same way that we've done that with the accounting and concepts, these themes are kind of progressed and built throughout each of the levels. And they're really important themes for us to be able to gain a good understanding of. For example, you know, with ethics now, instead of it just being in level 3, we brought in the 5 fundamental principles at level 2 first, so you've got an understanding of those and code of professional ethics. And then when you get to level 3, that's when you're then looking about the relevance of those ethical principles, looking at what the threats to those principles are, and then sort of things like ethical conflict and things like that. And then when you get on to level 4, that's more about analysing the importance of making sure that the accounting systems that we have are encouraging ethical principles. So it's always that kind of growing of the knowledge, but particularly with technology, it's something that we look at accounting software, obviously under Quals 16, that's a standalone unit as it is at the minute. But now, because everything that we do as an accountant is digital, everything is online, it's in the cloud, we're looking at you know, artificial intelligence, automation, things like that, that has much more of a key role in accounting and finance functions. But it's important to have that understanding early on in level 2 and then really go into much more detail about it across level 3 and level 4. things because of the fact we have wider businesses now. We're all kind of global businesses because we do have the opportunity to have services and products and clients from all across the earth because of the fact that our world through technology has become so much smaller now. But with that does come the risks to cybersecurity and cyber attacks. So it's things like that that is more relevant to us to have a good understanding of, so that we can be aware of that when we are using our data and what risks there are and things like that. So it's each of these themes has got quite a big, an important role to be able to be discussed and for you to learn about and to understand throughout each of those levels. The sustainability as well. So it's with kind of corporate social responsibilities introduced at level 2. And you then kind of start to look at that at level 3 about the performance of a business and how you use sustainable principles within the business role, and then sort of go on to analyse it further. So it's all about that kind of development of knowledge.
I think what I really like about these themes is it's key areas. It's areas that are, they should just be habit for us in that role in finance. So communication, we need to be good at communicating from the very start of our career, and we need to be building and improving those skills. Ethics, sustainability, they should always be there in what we're considering when we're working with our clients. And technology, there's no avoiding it, is there? It is definitely shaping a lot of our industry, and it has and will continue to change the role in finance. So I love that these themes are integrated right the way throughout the new syllabus. So it really does build good habits there.
Exactly. And it is again about making sure it's up to date, because communication back in our day when we were looking at communication, it was how would you send a fax? But obviously things like that are completely irrelevant now. And now we're looking at things like, social media. And actually, if we were to put postings on there, what is appropriate for us to post? How does that reflect on our company? What's the impact of inappropriate postings on social media? So it's making sure that the types of communication that we're looking at are relevant to what we're actually seeing and experiencing in our job now.
Definitely. And I can see some questions coming through the chat box. I'm not going to pick up on those because quite a few of those we are going to touch on as we go throughout this presentation, and any others I will pick up on towards the end. So thank you for posting those through. And Zoe, in addition to these new themes, I know that we currently have this using accounting software unit at level 2, and in its current format, that's not going to be in the new syllabus. So what's really happening to make sure that those digital skills are covered in the qualification?
So like I said, with it being removed as a standalone unit, it's going to be important to make sure that your training provider is incorporating this, because actually anyone who's done level 2 will know that it's about understanding those basic principles of double entry bookkeeping, and then you learn that through each of your units, and then you have this standalone, this is how we use Xero or QuickBooks or Sage, or this is how we use an accounting software. But because accounting software and digital technologies is absolutely, it is through everything that we do in the world of accounting now, it's about not keeping it just for one unit, but making sure that we're embedding it, and throughout the delivery keep referring to, so this is the theory, this is what your actual computer is doing when you press the buttons, this is the way you would post to, so you understand the theory of bookkeeping and accounting, but then actually looking at, so then now in practice, these are the skills that you would need. So this is how you would create the report, this is how you would enter the data. So making that constant connection between the theory and the actual practical digital skills that you're going to need. And that's not just in one standalone unit now, but it's throughout both the bookkeeping units at level 2 and then also the bookkeeping unit at level 3. It's referring back to that as well, because of the fact that technology is much more of a larger role throughout everything that we do. So that's why it needs to be incorporated throughout a number of our units.
Excellent. So it's still there, it's just much more integrated in how really you'd use it today. So some of the units are going to change. I wonder if you could just give me or give us just a bit of a brief overview as to what's going to change in terms of assessments and maybe the number of units that there will be at each level?
Yes, so at level 2 there has been a change, in fact across all of them. So we previously under Qual 16 at the minute there's 5 assessments. Qual 22 there will be 1 fewer. So there's just 4 assessments there. So as we mentioned, accounting software is coming out, so that's not there anymore. So that's why it's gone from 5 to 4. And then the synoptic assessment has also changed. So that is now going to become what's called the business environment. So it has much more of an emphasis on the different types of business environments, external and internal businesses and environments, and looking at things that maybe haven't been covered in quite so much context before, so things like business law, company law, and helping students to be able to also develop lifelong learning skills and setting them with good personal study skills and personal skills. So kind of giving them the opportunity to be able to really set themselves out on a really good footing at the very beginning, to have those good personal skills that they're going to need in work as well as in this whilst doing their qualification as well. So that's a new unit, is the business skills, but they're losing accounting software. And then at level 3 and level 4, there's changes to both of them. So level 3 has gone from 5 assessments down to 4 assessments. And the reason it's lost one of the assessments is because it's lost the synoptic assessment. That's no longer there. I can hear you cheering already. That there is, but they've also, because of combining advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep, that's now a combined unit. So it's also lost an assessment there. So we've lost those 2 assessments, but added in the business environment as a new standalone unit. So that's kind of taking it back up then to 4 assessments. So with advanced bookkeeping and final accounts prep, because there's so much synergy in what you're taught, you know, you go from your extended trial balance with all the journals and corrections that you need to make there to help you prepare for your final accounts, and then those adjustments that you would then make, and then actually, you know, putting yourself through to an income statement or statement of financial position. Because there's so much connection between those topics, we're bringing it together and teaching it as one big unit. So you'll then go from extended trial balance all the way through to your final account. So it is a bigger unit, but we think that will help with that learning because there's so much connection and it's removing the duplication of that. And then MMAC as well has now incorporated spreadsheets into that at level 3. So that also is a bigger unit. And then with business awareness unit being in there, that's where it will pick up ethics, business and law, looking at the impact of technology that you talked about. And obviously that's a beautiful, big, lovely unit, which is giving people a much more greater understanding and bringing together that business awareness to be able to help them to have a much better understanding of the different types of microeconomics and looking at things around data analytics. And so updating the level 3 a little more there. For the level 4, again, that's gone from 6 units down to 5 assessments that's needed because it's lost the synoptic assessment. And then budgeting and decision and control as our 2 management accounting units, they have been combined in the same way to kind of remove the duplication that we were seeing and then test it just as one unit. And so that's now called applied management accounting. So there are a number of changes. It does look a little bit different, but the majority of the content is still the same, just with some nice additions.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Zoe. Really, yeah, there have been some changes. The crux of it is accounting's still accounting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of content that still remains. But yeah, there's been some improvements in the way in which it's tested, I think, or not just changes in the way in which it's been assessed. And there's been some additions there with those new units. So yeah, I have popped up on the screen what it's looking like. I will share these slides with you also. It may be useful for you to be able to refer back to, particularly if you'll be moving on to a new level early next year when Qualifications 22 comes in. Lovely. Thank you for that, Zoe. So the next, you mentioned there about those synoptic assessments going. Currently, the synoptic assessments for anyone who's an apprentice, that forms their endpoint assessment. So how does the new syllabus work for an apprentice? What impact will it have?
So that will remain the same in the fact that if you are an apprentice, you will still do the synoptic assessment, and you will still do it after having gone through Gateway. You'll still have that to do. So there's not as much change for an apprentice because they will still have the same number of assessments that they're doing right now. But it means they'll kind of focus on, they will complete what's required for the AAT qualification while they're on programme, and then they'll go through Gateway. And then once they've gone through Gateway, that's when they then sit the 2 elements of the endpoint assessment that they need for their apprenticeship certificate. So it's still really, the journey still looks the same, and they still have that synoptic element at the end, as well as their professional discussion or reflective statement that they're doing, 3 or 4. And so it's something that is still then there. Those synoptic assessments are there to still test that they have got and are demonstrating the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the apprenticeship certificate. So it's still very much, you know, in synergy with what's being taught for the AAT qualification itself. It's just they have got that additional assessment. Excellent.
So it's still the crux of it. It looks the same for the apprenticeship journey. And really, if we're losing, there's going to be one less assessment. The apprentices will have the EPA to do on top. So actually, there's not going to be any change for them to the number of assessments that they'll be sitting.
That's right, yeah.
Lovely. So I'm certainly seeing lots of questions coming through, and I know this is something which is probably the most important question for people who are currently studying and they're partway through a level. We know that there is that period of time for them to continue and complete under AQ16. Do they have to stay on AQ16? Do they have to transfer over to Quals22? Kind of, if you're mid-level, what's going to be the impact for you?
So there's no set rule. It's down to the individual as to what they think they would like to do, because there are 2 options for them. So the 2 options are that you can stay and you can complete the qualification that you're on, stay on AQ16 and carry on with that so that you get everything finished, and that may be one of the easier options for you. Or it may be that you want to, if you wanted to move up to the next level, then you can transition over and you can take the units that you've already completed with you. But the only thing is that you would have to pay again, because it's a standalone one-off fee for each of the qualification levels. So it would mean you paying again. So what we would recommend is that actually it's about talking to your training provider, because people will be in different places at different times. Some things might suit one person, or a different option might be best suited for somebody else in a very different position. So your training providers are going to be able to kind of look at you on a one-to-one basis, give you the best suggestion, best guidance for you individually. And so it will all depend on where you are, the way you like to study, how many units you've got left, and what your reasons are for doing one or the other. So keep your communication with your training providers out, and they'll be able to give you that kind of best guidance.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Zoe. I think that's probably the most important thing to take away from this. If you are mid-level when you get to the end of January next year and Qualifications 22 comes in, deciding whether you finish your level under AQ16 or whether you transfer across to Quals 22 really should be for you to decide with conversations with your training provider. So if you are studying with First Intuition, if you're studying by distance learning or via live online classes, then do speak to the team. Speak to your allocated tutor, and they will give you the best advice based on the resources that you've received and what you've completed so far. And if you're studying in one of our study centres, speak to your contact at our centres, because they will be able to let you know which programs, which courses are going to be running and when. They'll also know individually for you what you've already sat, how that transitions, what that kind of gives you exemption against if you do transfer to Quals 22, and then what else you would still need to complete based on the courses that are running. If you're not studying with First Intuition, then speak to your training provider. So whether that's a college or another independent training provider, speak to them about it and see what advice they would give you for the best path for you. So I know there were quite a few questions that came through in the chat box about that transition. And as Zoe said there, there's no rule. So, yeah, we can't say that's what everyone should do. If you are going to be transferring, if you're going to finish level 2 and move on to level 3 after Quals 22 comes in, you'll be registering for a new level. That's registering for a new qualification. You will be on Qualifications 22 for that new level. So that's definitely something important to bear in mind. As you can see on the slide that I've put up here, speak to your training provider. There are things that will need to be considered. What your next level is going to be and what your next qualification is going to be. You will need to consider how close you are to that 30th of June 2023, how much you've got left to do and your pace of study, and also any additional costs there. So as Zoe mentioned, there is an additional cost if you are going to transfer, because there will be an additional qualification registration fee. So it's making sure that your situation and position is considered. So thank you for that, Zoe. Really, really is a question which I'm sure everyone is keen to know an answer for, but I think we can't give you an answer, but we can point you in the direction of what you should do now, or you should be looking to do to prepare for this new syllabus coming in. In relation to that, a couple of other little bits. There is, if you were to transfer mid-level, you will get credit for what you've already done across to the equivalent unit at Quals 22. Is that always the case for everything, Zoe? Does everything kind of get credit from one qual to the next?
So no, the majority of the units you can get credit from one unit to the next, but some of them don't map over. And so because of that, because of the way that the structure has changed, there are certain transitional arrangements which we can provide for you. So we've got a table for each of the units, which helps you to see if you've completed this unit, what does that transfer across? Does it have a direct transfer, or is it something that you're now going to have to sit the assessment again? So for example, the business awareness units, because they are relatively new in the way that they've been structured, there isn't anything that can transition across to them. And so it is about looking at which units you've done and looking at what the transitional arrangement options are for you. The one other thing just to bear in mind is the fact that because the syllabus and the criteria is bigger in Quals 22 and the learning outcomes have adjusted and changed, where we've removed some and brought new learning outcomes in, it does mean even if you had achieved a distinction at Quals 16, unfortunately, when you transfer it over, it will only transfer over as a pass, because we can't guarantee that you've covered everything that you would need of all of those additional learning outcomes to have put you at a distinction under the new qualification. So you can transfer the units over if it has an equivalent, which the majority of them do, but not all of them, but it does only go over at a pass. So that's something else you might want to consider, that actually is it worth making sure you finish off your levels so you can get out that pass merit distinction that you can still maintain with the Quals 16 that you've already gained.
Yeah, that's a really important consideration, is kind of what you'll be taking across as well. For those who are perhaps starting a new level in September, quite often following the academic year, we will have learners who will be starting a new level in September. If it may be planned into your learning journey by your centre, particularly if you're an apprentice, that you will transition midway through a level, but that will be planned, and that will be planned to make sure, or it can be planned to make sure, that the best opportunity is made of that transfer of credit from one qual to the next. Absolutely. I know this was a question that was mentioned in the chat box in terms of the knowledge. If you've studied under AQ16, you're then going to do the next level under Qualifications 22. And we've spoken about that kind of progression that's happening from one level to the next. Yeah, is there going to be an issue around gaps in knowledge, do we think?
So there is going to be an element of gaps that will be if you're going from AQ16 to Quals 22. That there is, because we've talked about the fact that, you know, we do now have this new business stream that's in there, these new business units that are there, as well as some of the technologies that might not have been covered. But what you will have is, if you are going from the current level 2, and then you're going to be transferring on to the new level 3, within the learning portal, so within the resources that you have available to you in the learning portal, you will have access to the business environment level 2 unit, even though you're on the level 3. So it'll give you that information so that you can go through and read the tutorials, do the e-learning, have a go at the practice assessments. You won't have to sit that assessment. It won't be required for you to have to actually do and pass, but we'll make sure that you've got access to all those resources, the reading materials and everything you need, so that you can just do that additional study or additional reading and fill in any of the gaps that you might need to build on that then when you then do your business awareness unit at level 3. Same with level 4. If you're going from the current syllabus at level 3 onto the new syllabus at level 4, in your learning portal you'll have the business awareness unit, which you can read and look at to be able to support you with that gap filling that you might need to do. And also, again, your training providers are there, and they're going to be able to, they'll know where those gaps are, so can incorporate that. And whenever we have a transition from one qualification to the next, because this isn't the first time, we do it every few years, whenever we have that transition, your tutors are well prepared, they understand where the differences are, they know what you're going to need if you're going from one qualification to the next. So they will have made arrangements to make sure that whatever you need will be covered if you're transitioning over. But if you do have any questions, then you know, there will be the resources on the learning portal for you to be able to use just to do that additional reading as well.
And that's a real benefit that the AAT are providing, that they are giving that kind of prior learning resource available for people that are starting under the new syllabus at the next level up. And yeah, training providers, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you get the best out of your qualification that you can. So we will be supporting with any sort of gaps in learning that there might be. Also, it's also worth remembering that when you start at level 3, having already done level 2, your experiences are probably going to have developed in that time as well. And some of that which is in the new syllabus at level 2, you may well have covered in the workplace through the experiences that you've had. So yeah, there will be gaps. There will be differences.
We want to try and make that, you know, here at AAT, and your training providers want to make that transition as smooth as possible and as easy as possible for you. So you'll have a lot of support there from going from one qualification over to the next.
Definitely, there is. So just as a sort of summary of that, Zoe, what would you say are the key things that someone needs to consider if they are deciding whether to stay on current syllabus or transfer to new syllabus if they've already started a level?
I think, again, what we've said already, just to take that point away, is talk to your training provider, because we want to make sure that you're making the best decision for you, and that you understand both what the benefits are, or what the challenges may be, or what's going to be the best path for you. So your training provider knows the way that you study, knows what you're capable of, knows actually where you were headed for merits and distinctions, understands actually compared to they will know what type of course that you're on, the way that you like to study, And so talk to them about it to be able to give you because it's down to an individual basis is what's going to work. So just keep those paths of communication open so that you can chat about it and see what's best. Particularly given the fact that there are both options available to you, so then you want to be able to make an informed decision.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Zoe. Just one final question that I want to leave on, if that's okay, before we look at whether there's any questions coming through the chat box. How would you sum up that the qualification has changed in order to reflect this changing role in finance, and how do you expect this to have that impact in the future?
So it is definitely changing when we're looking at the differences in technology, the developments that we've had. I think Damien was mentioning about data analytics, and that's something that has now become a really important part and a new role to accountants, which hasn't been there necessarily as much before. So because of the way that the accountancy role has changed, then the training that you're having to do is having to change and adapt to that, which is what we're seeing. Cloud accounting is something that back in our day, we put everything on a floppy disk and put it in a fireproof box, so things have changed so quickly and so much. So it's important to make sure that you'll be keeping up to date with these changes. But what I do want to say as well, though, is the fact that what you've learned on AQ16, it doesn't make your current syllabus irrelevant, because everything that you've learned so far has been really useful. It's giving you, all of those solid foundation knowledge, all of the practical skills you need, helping you to understand accountancy from finance and a management perspective. So it doesn't make Qual 16 irrelevant in any way, because actually every time that we make a qualification change, there's always going to be something that's an update, much faster recently, I appreciate, but that's why for our members of AAT, if they had qualified a number of years ago as part of the AAT membership, we provide opportunities, and there is an expectation of CPD, because you need to be continually making sure that you are developing yourselves professionally. And then as an AAT member, we give you opportunity to do things like data analytics courses to make sure you're up to date, understanding making tax digital as that comes out. So nothing that you've ever learned is going to be lost, but it's about always looking at how that evolving role of an accounting technician is coming into play, and the importance of making sure that we adjust and change to make sure that you've got all the skills you need to be effective as that role changes and continues to evolve.
That's such a great point. It's everything that you're learning now, what you're doing under AQ16 is absolutely relevant to that role in finance. The changes that are happening are to future-proof the qualification, and if you're qualified, you will be doing that anyway, because you have to do your CPD and remain up to date. So you will continue with your journey, just like anyone who does it under Quals 22 when it changes to Qualifications 2025 or whatever it will be in the future. There will be further updates and changes to keep up with them. Definitely. So yeah, a really good point. And do make sure that you do stay up to date. The AAT offer a fantastic range of resources, not just once you're qualified, in order to make sure that you're staying up to date. I mentioned it yesterday on a session that I was running. The AAT Comments has such a huge range of resources, articles, discussions, stuff which is very relevant to actually experiences, to working, as well as lots of resource there to help with your studies as well. So definitely make sure you utilise that resource, and it will help you to stay up to date and to understand those new things that are coming into our world in finance. We have a couple of other questions which I will probably come to you with, Zoe. So one is, would you recommend switching once a level is finished, as this is a more up-to-date qualification? I think the key bit there is that it's once a level is finished, that's no longer optional. So if you finish a level and you're going to start the next level before Qualifications 22 comes in, you will be doing it under the current syllabus. But if you finish a level and you're moving to the next level next year, so once we have the new syllabus, you will have to register onto the new syllabus. So it will depend on when you're registering. If you're questioning whether you should maybe wait a couple of months, if you finish one level in December, should you wait until February? What would be your advice there, Zoe?
I think it's about understanding what you have available to you as far as what courses are running with the training provider or the way that you're studying. And again, it's about making sure that if you are going to stay, that you're giving yourself enough time to complete it, to register, to sit the exams and to be comfortable. But actually that may be a relevant point for you to be able to start to look and to read up in order to then move into the Quals 22 when it becomes available, so you have the most up-to-date option. However, we don't want this to be something where it's stopping you doing your training. We want you to keep progressing. We want you to make sure that you are continuing to be able to keep up to date with your knowledge and keep the momentum going. And sometimes if you stop for a number of months, it can be a little bit harder to get going again. So kind of think about sort of the situation you're in and whether that's going to work for you as well. Whether a break is going to work, or whether as you've got plenty of time, if you were to finish in December, does that give you the option of just keep going? And then again, what have you got when it comes down to the support from your training provider and what you've got available to you then as well? So back to talking to your training provider, I'm afraid. I think that's a really good thing to be able to just reiterate, talk to them just to see what's going to be the right option for you.
I definitely think that's a bit of a mantra from this session, that if in doubt, talk to your training provider. That is what we are here for. We're here to support you with those decisions, but also to recommend what is most suited to your situation. So there were some other questions which talked about when to transfer over. I think we've probably covered off those, but a couple of people have asked questions about the new membership costs. So rather than sharing the costs now, I don't expect you to remember what those are off the top of your head, Zoe, but are you able to let us know whereabouts we would find out that information about what the new membership fees would be?
Yes, so the new membership fees are available on the AAT website. We do have a dedicated page for Quals 22, and it's got that in there about it, but it's something that we could send through. Is that something that we could send through? Have you got these yet? So we have got something that we could share with, but it is also your training provider also will be able to provide you with that knowledge as well. And I think that in the regular weekly newsletters that you guys get from AAT Weekly, just make sure that you are definitely registered to that, because it's a really useful form of communication from us directly to you every week, giving you those updates. And that's where we're able to share some of the things like the fees, different sessions that are running, giving you information. So when you go into your MyAAT, just make sure that your communications has been ticked, so that you do get AAT Weekly directly into your email address every Wednesday. Because we're always giving out lots of useful information in there to be able to keep you up to date of the changes that are coming. So make sure that you're registered and signed up to AAT Weekly.
Fantastic. And another question that I've just been asked about transitioning. So talking about completing levels 2 and 3 under AQ16 and level 4 under AQ22. If someone does some under current syllabus and some under the new syllabus, will it make any difference to what they have at the end, what their membership and their status is once qualified?
No, it won't do, because you still have you'll become fully qualified accounting technician, whichever pathway you've gone down. So your certificate will be the same, it will look the same, and so it will still be recognised by employers with the same respect that they have for any AAT qualification. And like we've said, our AAT qualifications are regularly updated, so they're always changing to make sure that they're relevant, and our employers understand that. But there's no difference between what you would achieve as far as the certificate that you get. The only difference is the name of it. So what at the moment it's called your level 4 is your professional diploma in accounting, and now we're going to say the AQ Quals 22 will say level 2, level 3, level 4. So the naming of it slightly changes, but what it represents and what it means stays the same.
Fantastic. Thank you, Zoe. That's been really, really useful. Thank you so much for joining us, Zoe. It's been great to hear your insights and to also really give us some good detail about the impact of Qualifications 22. So thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone else for coming along.